So, all three of you have kind of transplanted yourselves into Silicon Valley, which is, I think, a good perspective because people always want to know how do I break into Silicon Valley. But I think one thing that I want to start off with is what is Silicon Valley? I mean, can you really tell me about what is this place that everybody talks about? Devrim, you want to start?
Yes, I will talk about Silicon Valley. Being here 2004 to 6, and then I moved to Silicon Valley. I started a company here in Istanbul, and then moved to Silicon Valley. A benchmark, I think what I found in Silicon Valley is the culture of investment and startups, and valuing a startup, valuing an entrepreneur greatly, not like some entrepreneurs think themselves a little less than the money owners. In Silicon Valley, you just find this difference that if you have an idea and if it works, then you have the choice of investors because they just come and contact you. It's more inbound than you actually pitch yourself to them. And the second thing I found is there is no pretending. Everybody is real. You wouldn't know who is an investor, who is a developer, and who is just working there. You just are yourself. You just present yourself. You go, hey, this is what I'm doing, and then they will, introduce themselves the same way. I think that's the main difference. You don't present yourself as, hey, I am the owner of this company, or nobody says like, hey, I have this much money or something. Like that's not there. Or where you come from, what do you believe in? It's just is irrelevant. What you do is the question they ask, and if you do a great thing, you will find great people.
Oh, that's an interesting point, because I always talk about this when talking about people in New York. I really get annoyed. People always ask me, what do you do? And they want to define you by kind of what your profession is, but I always say it's who you want to be and kind of what you're involved in. So that's an interesting distinguisher.
Yeah, I think in Europe, I was in Holland before I came to Istanbul. I was there for 4 years. The question they ask in Europe is, where do you come from? How is that relevant, right? Like, it just starts from there. And then it's like, okay, I'm from Turkey. Oh, you don't look like other Turkish people. Like dude, what exactly do you mean by that? Like, it just doesn't, it's not the subject that I want to discuss with you, how I compare to the rest of my people, right? Like, that just doesn't start from there. In San Francisco, it almost is totally irrelevant. You just don't even hear, or you don't even think that they are thinking about that. It's just, what do you do? For me, it means, what do you contribute back to the society? If your contribution is large, then you get respect, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in.
Emre, before you take a drink of your water, I don't want you to have a Mark Rubio moment. What's your perspective? How do you see it?
I agree with Devrim. Everything he says. I think there's no entitlement in Silicon Valley, and I mean, it's not comparable to anywhere else. So, I mean, it's a nice place to be. It's full of, there are a lot of investors. There's a very vibrant entrepreneurship and startup ecosystem. So it's more than just a geographic place. It's a place where all these things happening, technology is happening. Yeah.
And speaking of technology, now Dilaver, you started at Yahoo and then segued into kind of the entrepreneurial sphere. Can you talk a little bit about what your perspective of Silicon Valley is?
So I've had this interesting perspective of working in big companies in the Valley. I started out at Siebel System, which was acquired by Oracle, the original CRM maker, before Salesforce.com came on the scene. And then I was at SAP and Yahoo, and then came to what I call the bleeding edge entrepreneurship, which is to run a company out of Turkey. And as you can tell, I'm not of Turkish origin. My perspective is, I think I would agree with some of the points made earlier, but I do feel that it's very important to lay it out there. The Silicon Valley is no nirvana. It is not this absolute ideal place that we often idolize outside the United States. It's very much what we make of it. And I think it is true of a lot of places. So first of all, I would say you're not missing much if you're not there, because you could do a lot of things that are happening there by having the similar attitude. So to answer your question, my view is Silicon Valley is really about the state of mind, and the state of mind has been evolving. I mean, the Valley was built over 50 years after this ecosystem that's been built up through academia, Stanford, Berkeley, and other places, and then a bunch of companies that made it big. And then the value chain has been exploding from semiconductor all the way to now consumer web. But it has had the need to constantly evolve. We've had big booms and huge busts. You want to go and ask the entrepreneurs how they felt about the bust, you wouldn't hear a lot of the nice things. So it is true that pedigree is less important. It is true it is very international. It is true it is very accepting. It is true it is accepting of failure. But it also has, it is its weaknesses. And in some ways, it's sort of coming of age now that the industry is, almost 20, 30 years old. So that's my perspective. The key takeaway is it's something that is very much evolving as we speak.